Have you ever looked at a job description and just thought, does this really cover what I do or, what I could do?
Oh, absolutely. Or maybe you've tried to get your head around all this talk about the future of work.
And just felt completely lost in the noise? Yeah, you are definitely not alone there. And that's exactly why we're doing this deep dive.
Today, we're really aiming to come through that. We're diving into the skills-powered organization, the journey to the next generation enterprise.
Yeah.
It's a pretty groundbreaking book from MIT Press, just out in 2024, by Ravi Bapna and Tanuj Kapilaswamy.
Yeah, and our mission today is pretty straightforward. We want to unpack how organizations are finally starting to move beyond those kind of outdated, rigid, job-focused models.
To become truly skills-powered.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're basically offering you a shortcut to understanding this huge shift in how work actually gets done, and maybe more importantly, how you can find your place and really thrive in it.
Mm-hmm. We've pulled out the key insights, the really important nuggets, and even some surprising facts from the book to help you get genuinely well-informed on this.
We'll be drawing straight from this source, making sure we distill what it says about these new organizations, the huge role AI plays.
And how it all impacts everything, really, from leadership right down to your own career path.
Okay, so let's unpack this. For the last 140 years or so?
Yeah.
Work has mostly been organized around jobs, right? These neat boxes within functional hierarchies.
Yeah, jobs have been the currency. They've dictated how talent gets deployed, how orgs are structured. I mean, it's been the whole operating system for HR, finance, even tech systems.
But those familiar job boxes, they're starting to crack, aren't they?
They really are. And it's not a gentle crumbling either. There are some powerful forces basically showing up this old job-based system as, well, frankly, slow and just not cut out for what's coming.
Like what sort of forces?
Well, you've got accelerated change, this huge demand for organizations to be more agile, the massive impact of AI and automation, critical efforts around diversity and equity, and, of course, the explosion of things like the gig economy, alternative work arrangements.
So all of that is pushing us away from jobs towards skills.
Exactly. Skills are becoming the fundamental building blocks, the new currency, you could say.
And this isn't just theory, right? We're seeing companies actually do this.
Oh, definitely. There's real proof it works. Take IBM, for instance. Way back in 2017, their former CEO, Ginni Rometty, was already talking about new-collar jobs.
Right. The ones that don't always need a college degree.
Precisely. And what's really striking is they found back then that 15% of their U.S. hires didn't have a 4-year degree. They focused on vocational training, real skills.
15% then, and now?
Now get this, over 50% of positions at IBM don't have a degree requirement anymore.
Wow. That really shows the shift in focus.
It does. And IBM isn't alone. A recent Deloitte study found something like 90% of executives are experimenting with skills-based approaches.
90%? That's huge.
It is. And maybe even more compelling for those companies, they're finding they are 63% more likely to get results across key business metrics. Things like getting the right talent in the right place, innovation.
That's a serious competitive edge.
Absolutely. And we saw real-world examples during the pandemic too, didn't we? Like Verizon.
Oh yeah, they redeployed thousands of store employees, right, to telesales and customer service online.
Almost 20,000.
Right?
And they could do it because they had a skills-based view of their workforce. They understood the underlying capabilities.
It wasn't just about the job title store associate.
Exactly. And Bank of America did something similar, redeployed 30,000 people quickly to handle all the calls and queries from the CARES Act. It just highlights that agility you get when you think beyond rigid jobs.
Okay, so if skills are the new currency, the big question is, how do we actually measure them? How do we talk about them?
That's key. The authors break skills down into two main buckets. You've got verified skills, things like certifications, formal assessments.
Stuff you can easily prove.
Right. And then there are unverified skills. These are often inferred by AI, maybe looking at your past roles, or they're skills you self-report.
Okay, and that self-reporting part. There's something interesting there, isn't there? From Skyhive.
Yes, this is fascinating. Skyhive, they're a tech company in this space, found that people typically list about, say, 11 skills for their role when asked.
Okay, sounds reasonable.
But when Skyhive's AI analyzed their actual work history, education, experiences to infer skills, that number jumped to 34.
34 from 11. Wow. That really makes you stop and think, doesn't it? About all the skills you might have that you aren't even consciously recognizing.
Exactly. It highlights this huge potential gap, and it leads to a really crucial point the authors make. Experience, just the time you spent doing something, isn't necessarily a good proxy for how proficient you are at a skill.
So just because you've done something for 10 years doesn't mean you're great at all the skills involved.
Precisely. The book uses a helpful framework here from John Boudreau and Pete Ramstad. They suggest assessing skill expression based on three things. Is it done efficiently? Without wasted effort.
Makes sense.
Is it done effectively? Does it actually achieve the outcome you wanted?
Okay.
And is it done impactfully? Does how you do it actually enhance the experience for others or help achieve a bigger goal? It's about how you use the skills, the quality of expression, not just ticking a box saying you have it.
So how do we get here? The skills-powered idea feels new, but you said the job construct is like 140 years old?
Right, it's a long history. It really starts back in the Second Industrial Revolution, roughly 1870 to 1930. And here's the twist. Frederick Taylor's Scientific Management around 1909, which grouped activities into jobs and hierarchies.
The thing we now see as rigid.
Yeah. Back then, it actually democratized opportunity. It broke down the old craft monopolies, automated tasks, and arguably reduced inequality by making work more accessible. What was progressive then feels restrictive now.
Interesting. So what happened next?
Then came the Third Industrial Revolution, say 1955 to 2005. Information became democratized, leading to outsourcing and offshoring. But the key thing is, the job itself still remained the main way of organizing work.
Even with all that change.
Right. But this era also saw what they called job polarization. Computers created more opportunities for high-income, college-educated workers, while a lot of routine, rules-based work got substituted.
And that leads us to where we are now, the Fourth Industrial Revolution.
Exactly. From about 2005 onwards, cloud computing, mobile tech, AI, this truly democratized work itself, decoupling it from a specific place or time or structure.
That's where gig work really took off.
And critically, that's when the shift towards skills as the main currency really began gaining momentum. Technology made work fluid, and the old job structures just couldn't keep up.
So why the big push for skills right now? What's the trigger?
It feels like a perfect storm, really. You've got ongoing labor shortages in many areas, the massive increase in remote work.
Which makes skills more visible than just being present.
Precisely. Plus the huge growth in online learning, micro-credentials, and these sophisticated tools that can actually map skills to jobs and tasks. It all makes a skills-based approach not just possible, but really practical and urgent.
And there's a business case too, right? You mentioned research.
Yeah, strong commercial reasons. Research by Dave Ulrich and Norm Smallwood, working with AWS, found that human capability, so talent, leadership, organization, HR, accounts for nearly 45% of revenue per employee.
45%. Wow.
And 26% of earnings. So nurturing and deploying that human capability effectively is a massive lever for companies.
But tapping into that capability, it sounds like the challenge is how dynamic skills are now.
That's a huge part of it. The demand for new skills is just spreading incredibly fast across all sectors, like data analysis skills, relevant in 17 occupations in 2011, but 81 occupations by 2021.
Just 10 years later.
Exactly. And work increasingly needs cross-domain skills. Marketers need data skills now. Engineers need communication skills. Requests for creativity in job postings jumped from 12 occupations in 2012 to 55 in 2022.
So skills are spreading, combining.
Yes, and emerging constantly, which is great for opportunity, but it also means skills become obsolete faster, which is a threat for workers and employers. And digital skills are leading the charge, fastest growing, fastest spreading. The bottom line is, skills are always moving targets now.
Which brings us to this idea of the half-life of skills shrinking. I think you mentioned Matt Siegelman.
Yes, from the Burning Glass Institute.
Yeah.
He notes that about 37% of the average jobs required skills have been replaced just in the last 5 years.
37% in 5 years.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's kind of terrifying. It makes it incredibly hard to know what skills to even invest in learning for yourself or for your team.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
And it highlights why we need a more strategic way to think about skills, which brings us to a really useful concept in the book, the skill investment thesis. It's a real aha moment.
Okay, skill investment thesis. How does that work?
They suggest looking at skills along 3 lines. Time to skill. How long does it take to get proficient? Skill value. What's the average market salary for it? And skill longevity. How long is this skill likely to stay relevant?
Okay, time, value, longevity. That makes sense.
And based on those, they identify 5 different skill themes. This is super helpful for you, the listener, thinking about your own development.
All right, let's hear them.
First, solid investment skills. These take time or money to acquire, but they last a long time. Think risk management, project management.
Okay, high effort, high reward, long term.
Exactly. Then quick dividend skills. These have pretty good longevity, medium to high, and they're often cheaper to learn yourself than for a company to hire someone already skilled.
Yeah.
Examples: Salesforce administration, understanding data structures.
Good ROI there. What else?
Third, enduring skills. Very high longevity, low cost to develop or hire. These are often the human skills. Teamwork, research, communication, always valuable.
The classic.
Fourth, adaptive skills. These can be costly to hire and learn, and crucially, their longevity is lower. Think specific programming languages like Swift or network security. They need constant updating.
High maintenance skills.
You could say that. And finally, commodity skills. These are widely available, easy to find, relatively inexpensive to acquire through hiring. Basic web development, CSS, things like that.
So understanding these types really helps you strategize where to put your own time and effort.
Absolutely. It's about building a smart portfolio of skills, not just collecting random badges.
So we know why skills matter, how to think about investing in them. What does an organization built around this actually look like day to day?
Well, it's interesting. The authors actually asked ChatGPT to describe one.
They asked an AI. Okay, what did it say?
And its answer really nailed the core ideas. It talked about fluid and adaptable roles people using their skills across different projects, not stuck in one job description.
Makes sense.
It mentioned skill identification and mapping companies, actively investing in understanding and documenting employee skills, using assessments, feedback, maybe AI.
So they know what they have.
Right, and skills-powered teams and projects. Teams formed based on the skills needed for a goal, not just who's in what department. That creates huge flexibility and collaboration.
What else did the AI pick up on?
Continuous learning and development making, training, mentorship, and resources a priority so people can keep their skills sharp. Agile decision-making, where power shifts to those with the relevant expertise for the problem at hand.
The more decentralized.
Exactly. Plus, collaboration and knowledge sharing is a core cultural value. And finally, performance measurement, based on skills looking at contributions and skill application, not just whether you fulfilled your job title duties.
It's fascinating that even an AI converges on these same principles. It suggests they're becoming pretty fundamental.
It really does. And the authors provide a roadmap outlining 7 critical factors needed for this transformation. These are like the pillars holding it all up.
What are they?
They are. Leadership mechanisms and skills, agility in the organizational model itself, reinventing the work experience, building new organizational capabilities, leveraging AI effectively, the changing role of the HR function, and even thinking beyond the organization's traditional walls.
That's a lot to cover. Where's the best place to start?
Let's start with leadership, because honestly, nothing changes without leadership buying in and adapting. It requires a huge mindset shift.
How so?
Well, that old idea of learn, do, retire, linear career path, it's just gone. Completely obsolete.
Right.
There's that quote from Alvin Toffler's Future Shock back in 1970. The illiterate of the 21st century won't be those who can't read or write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. It's never been more true.
Because of the constant change, the tech,
Yeah.
the working longer.
Exactly. The new pattern is more like learn, do, maybe rest or recharge, learn again, repeat. Learning isn't a phase you finish. It's a continuous loop baked into work itself.
That also changes how leaders think about ability, doesn't it? It's not just about qualifications on paper anymore.
Not at all. It's shifting from static employment qualifications to dynamic work readiness. Think about technical skills. You can learn Python development pretty quickly and cheaply online now, maybe through LinkedIn Learning.
Right. You don't need a 4-year CS degree necessarily.
Exactly. And this online learning world also reveals skill adjacencies, like graphic design and 3D animation are closely related skills. But Python programming, not so much related to graphic design.
So leaders need to understand these connections.
Yes, and shift their mindset. Instead of only looking for the perfect candidate who ticks every box, they should look for people who are optimally close. They have adjacent skills or the core aptitude, and then have strategies to bridge the gap, optimize the work around the person.
And automation plays a role here too.
A big one. It's not just replacing tasks. It's constantly creating new skills that are needed, and it also provides new ways for people to acquire and demonstrate those skills.
Okay, so mindset shifts, ability shifts. What about reward? How does compensation change?
That's undergoing a huge shift too. Moving away from salaries tied rigidly to a permanent job title towards more flexible total rewards linked to deconstructed work, and specific valued skills.
So you get paid for the skills you're using on a project, maybe.
Potentially, yes. There are tools now, like Mercer's compensation pricing tool mentioned in the book, that can actually put a market value on discrete skills. And look at platforms like Upwork. They show efficient markets for tasks already, with prices changing fast based on demand.
So more data, more transparency for both sides.
Exactly. It fosters this constant negotiation around work and reward based on real-time skill value.
And deployment, how people get assigned to work.
That changes fundamentally. We move from rigid job architectures, job families, levels, to a dynamic work architecture.
Work architecture, what does that mean?
It means continuously matching skills to the actual work that needs doing, using data from lots of sources, internal profiles, maybe LinkedIn, Upwork data, to see who has the capabilities needed for a specific task or project right now.
So the leader's role isn't just fill the job vacancy.
No, it shifts. It becomes about optimizing worker development for this perpetual evolution of work. It's a much more fluid, ongoing process than just slotting people into jobs.
Which leads directly to development itself, I guess. The old career ladder seems shaky.
Completely. We're moving from those fixed ladders based on jobs to more dynamic reskilling pathways based on tasks and how jobs themselves are being reinvented.
And you mentioned human skills being key here.
Yes, because technical skills change so rapidly and are often augmented or replaced by automation. Human skills, collaboration, critical thinking, creativity, empathy, they tend to have much longer shelf lives.
So development needs to focus there, too.
Absolutely. And leaders need to actively design space for learning within the flow of work. It can't be an afterthought or just a discretionary budget item anymore. It's mission critical.
The book gives an example, like an accountant.
Right. Their career might not be just climbing the accounting ladder. With the right human skills, maybe they manage an oil rig's finances, or lead an actuarial function, or become an independent quality assessor. It's about transferable human capabilities opening up diverse paths.
This all points to a very different style of leadership. More humanistic, maybe?
That's a good way to put it. The book outlines 5 specific new leadership skills needed for this world. First, leaders need to shift from hierarchical authority to empowerment and alignment. Meaning less top-down command, more focusing on how work gets done, orchestrating resources around the needed skills, aligning teams to a common goal.
Okay, what's second?
Second, shifting from a purely technical view of automation to a humanistic one. Leaders need to thoughtfully balance humans and AI. Understand where humans excel creativity, cultural nuance, innovation, and actively fight biases that just assume machines are always better or cheaper.
That's crucial. Third,
moving from episodic DEI efforts to a continuous focus. Diversity, equity, and inclusion can't just be a program or an initiative. It has to be woven into every interaction, every decision about work and talent, constantly asking if choices are enhancing fairness or perpetuating bias.
making it truly systemic. Number 4.
Fourth, evolving from just being digitally savvy to having real tech fluency. It's not just about using tools. It's about deeply understanding how to combine human and machine capabilities in the work ecosystem, using algorithms for coordination, knowing when AI should replace, augment, or totally reinvent how work is done.
A much deeper understanding.
And the last one. Fifth, shifting from rigid process execution to dynamic project guidance. This means sourcing talent from anywhere outside rapidly assembling agile teams, using methods like Scrum or sprints, and constantly adapting the rules of the game as jobs give way to skills.
It's a fundamentally different way of operating as a leader.
It really is. And we can see these ideas in practice in the Standard Chartered case study in the book. They're a huge old bank, 170 years, 85,000 employees.
So, not a nimble startup. How did they approach this?
They started by changing the language. All managers became people leaders. A small change, maybe, but it signaled a shift. You lead people, not just manage tasks.
Setting the tone.
Exactly. Then they created a leadership agreement with 14 specific practices. Things like setting an aspirational vision, making bold decisions, experimenting, building trust, coaching, valuing diverse thinking. It balanced those crucial human skills with the necessary technical ones.
So they defined what good leadership looked like in this new context. How do they help leaders develop those skills?
They refreshed their core training programs, added certifications. They held monthly global calls for leaders to share practical experiences, like how they were navigating hybrid work during the pandemic.
Learning from each other.
They really pushed learning agility, encouraging leaders to build that culture in their own teams, to use the language of skills daily. And critically, they encourage leaders to think about deconstructing jobs into tasks to enable talent sharing instead of talent hoarding.
Ah, breaking down those silos. That's often a big hurdle.
A huge one. They also use tech, an AI platform called Discover, to offer bite-sized learning, practical missions to try out new leadership skills, making it accessible to everyone.
And they measured it too, right?
Yes, they built a leadership dashboard. It uses 360 feedback to benchmark leaders on the environment they create and their skills. The idea is to eventually use this data for skills passports to help internal mobility.
Skills passports, interesting.
Yeah, and they even added a specific award category for people leadership in their big company recognition program, showing top-level commitment.
So they really embedded it. How did they tackle the broader shift from jobs to skills across the organization?
It started with strategic workforce planning, SWP. They used it to identify sunset roles, ones likely to shrink, like in operations or sales support, and sunrise roles. The growth areas like cloud engineering, cybersecurity, UX design.
So they got a clear picture of the future demand.
Yes, and that analysis revealed two really important things. First, the cost implications. The structure was shifting from a pyramid shape to more of a diamond, needing more mid-level skilled roles.
Fewer entry-level, more skilled middle.
Right. Second, and this was critical, it highlighted gender diversity risks. More women were in the sunset roles, more men in the sunrise roles.
Wow, okay, so that created a really compelling business case for proactive reskilling and upskilling.
Absolutely. It wasn't just hypothetical. It was a clear business and fairness imperative. So they focused on building a learning habit around the priority skills for those sunrise roles, creating specific future skills academies.
And a key piece of this was their internal talent marketplace, wasn't it?
The absolute linchpin, yes. An AI-based platform where projects or gigs could be posted and employees could find opportunities based on their skills, often without needing direct manager approval first.
Removing the bottleneck.
Exactly. Letting talent flow more freely to where it's needed.
Is there an example of how that worked in practice?
A great one is the Breaking the Silence gig. A team in India needed a really diverse mix of skills, tech, risk, project management, marketing for a project on deaf-friendly banking.
Okay, niche skills probably scattered around.
Right. Instead of trying to hire externally or pull people off jobs, they posted the gig on the marketplace. They found people from totally different departments and locations who had the needed skills and the interest. Like someone from supply chain had programming skills, a user acceptance testing manager knew cloud computing, someone from the tax team had audit experience.
So they crowdsourced the team internally based on skills.
Precisely. And they built a scalable framework for the project in just 4 months. It's a perfect example of skills-powered agility.
And did this marketplace actually deliver results, business-wise?
Oh yeah, the numbers are impressive. In the pilot phase in 2020, it unlocked about 14,000 hours of productivity, worth over $500,000.
Just in the pilot.
That grew to over $6 million across more than 1,700 gigs later on. And importantly, employee satisfaction scores related to career and development opportunities went up by over 5 percentage points between 2019 and 2023.
So it's good for the bottom line and for employees. Why the engagement boost?
A key insight is that it allows people to find work that aligns with their interests and personal purpose, not just their assigned job. That's a huge driver of engagement.
And AI is obviously crucial to making this marketplace work at scale.
Absolutely essential. Matching thousands of skills to hundreds of projects across 85,000 people, you need technology for that. The machine learning algorithms handle cleaning the skills data, understanding relationships between skills, even without a perfectly predefined taxonomy.
So it learns and adapts.
Constantly. It rematches talent as needs change. It integrates with their learning platform, Discover, recommending training based on the gigs people are interested in. It now supports mentoring, short assignments, even find permanent roles through AI matching.
They're even using it to build personalized career paths.
Yes. In wholesale banking, they're creating skills profiles for job families and using AI to suggest skill-building options and career moves that aren't just linear, offering one-click hyper-personalization.
But with all this AI, what about responsible use? Bias in algorithms is a big concern.
A very valid concern, and they address it directly. They establish strong governance, a council for responsible use of AML, a fairness working group with people from tech, data, business, compliance, risk, HR, all reviewing and challenging how AI is used.
So checks and balances?
Yes, with a real emphasis on using balanced, high-quality data to train the models to try and mitigate bias.
Hmm.
They acknowledge AI is powerful, but it needs careful, responsible oversight.
Okay, the standard chartered example really brings it to life. It seems to tie back to those core capabilities you mentioned earlier: work design, talent deployment, talent development.
Exactly. Those three are pivotal, and each one needs the right processes, the right technology, and those new leadership rules, or as Gary Bowles puts it, the right mindset, skill set, and tool set.
Let's break those down. Start with work design. What's the process there?
It starts with deconstructing jobs into their elemental tasks. Then, critically, analyzing how humans and automation can best work together using that return on improved performance, or ROIP idea.
ROIP, how does that work again?
You look at where automation can, say, eliminate mistakes in routine tasks, reduce variance in quality, or maybe incrementally or even exponentially improve the value created. The book uses a hospital robot example.
Huh, right. Not will robots replace nurses.
Exactly. But rather, which nursing tasks are suitable for automation? Taking temperatures? Maybe. Administering complex medication or handling a crisis probably needs human judgment and empathy. Deconstruction clarifies the optimal mix.
Okay, so deconstruct, analyze the human AI mix. Then what?
Then figure out the best talent arrangement for the remaining human tasks. Is it full-time employees, volunteers, freelancers found on a platform, a shared service center? And finally, you reconstruct the work, which often highlights very different skill profiles than the original job description.
And the new leadership rules for work design.
Leaders need to think bigger than just departmental budgets. They need to understand the total cost of work, TKOW. That includes full-timers, gig workers, vendor costs, and the capital investment in AI or robotics.
A holistic view.
And they shift from just delegating tasks to actively orchestrating all these different work options. It's less siloed, more boundaryless, maybe sharing automation tools or vendor relationships across the organization.
And technology helps here too.
Big time. AI tools, like one from Mercer mentioned in the book, can help automate the job deconstruction, suggest redeployment options, and track how skill needs are shifting.
Okay, that's work design. What about talent deployment? Getting skills to the right place.
The process here is about insight and matching. First, insight into the demand for skills. What does the business need? This comes from managers, project leads, but also increasingly inferred by AI analyzing work patterns.
Knowing what you need.
Second, insight into the supply of skills. Who has these skills? Both internally and externally, using tools like Skyhive or Eightfold to map capabilities.
Knowing what you have.
Exactly. And third, efficiently matching that demand and supply. This is where talent marketplaces come in, often using smart nudges or incentives like Google, using little recommended icons to guide people to relevant opportunities.
And the leadership shift for deployment.
This is a big one. Talent becomes an enterprise asset, not something owned by a specific manager or department.
That requires letting go of control.
It does. Leaders shift from just managing their budget to actively giving and getting capability across the organization. Some companies even mandate that, say, 5% or 15% of new work must be posted on the internal marketplace before they can open a traditional hiring rec.
Forcing the sharing.
Kind of, yeah. And empowering and enabling talent becomes key, because if you want people to engage short-term on gigs, they need to feel supported. Technology-wise, it's all about those AI-powered internal and external marketplaces. Gloat, Fuel 50, Upwork, etc.
Unilever Flex was an example here.
Yeah, amazing results. They resourced over 700 projects in just 90 days. 60% of them involve people crossing functions or geographies. It unlocked the equivalent of 241 full-time employees worth of hours, and 90% of the people involved said they learned something new. Huge win-win.
Incredible. Okay, last one. Talent development.
The process focus shifts relentlessly to work readiness, not just paper qualifications. And it prioritizes those enabling skills. We talked about the human skills, the learning skills, because the technical ones change so fast. Marketplaces help by making these enabling skills visible and valued in their taxonomies.
And the leadership rule.
Development is seen as a mission-critical investment, period. Not optional, not nice to have. Leaders have to consciously design that space for learning in the flow of work because the pace of upskilling required is just too high otherwise.
And AI helps again.
Yes, providing insights into skill gaps and connecting people with the right learning resources at the right time, often personalized.
So these three capabilities, work design, talent deployment, talent development powered by tech, and new leadership, that's the engine of the skills-powered org.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
But the book also pushes us to think beyond the boundaries of a single organization.
Towards open ecosystems.
Exactly. Work is increasingly flowing outside the traditional company walls. Skills become the currency not just internally but externally too, reducing the friction of engaging talent. We're shifting from B2B outsourcing of whole jobs to more B2C relationships with individual gig workers for specific tasks, often via platforms.
The lines are blurring. Gary Bowles and Lena Nair had a phrase for this.
Yes, the age of the organization as community, where culture is the new structure. Organizations become less like rigid hierarchies and more like communities, defined by a shared identity where membership isn't always binary. You might be deeply involved in one, your main job, and loosely connected to others, gigs, projects.
And a really radical example of this is DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations.
Potentially, yes. They use blockchain tech, smart contracts, digital tokens for collective governance. Think fully transparent operations, often open source IP, decisions made by token holders voting.
That sounds fundamentally different from a typical company.
It is. Collective versus centralized decisions, permissionless versus permissioned ownership, flat versus hierarchical structure, public versus private information, open source versus closed source IP. The book suggests this could be a fourth model of workflow beyond fixed jobs, flexible work, and internal flow offering even less friction, where work truly just flows to talent anywhere.
It's a mind-bending concept. How would roles even work in a DAO?
They morph. You might have a small core coordinating group, a broader set of contributors, maybe other DAOs, gig workers, and an even wider group of members who just promote the brand or help crowdsource ideas. And they're all rewarded differently, maybe value sharing for the core, fixed payments for contributors, NFTs for members.
Are companies actually doing this now?
They're prototyping, using DAOs to get broader input on business models, using tokens to reward freelancers, maybe even outsourcing social or environmental goals to a dedicated DAO, integrating blockchain into supply chains. It's early days, but it pushes the boundary of what an organization even is.
And governments have a role to play in this skill shift too, right? Enabling it.
A crucial one, especially addressing things like the degree gap. In the U.S., you mentioned 60% of workers don't have a 4-year degree, but it's often a gatekeeper. Opportunity at Work at Accenture identified 71 million workers they call stars, skilled through alternative routes.
Stars, I like that.
So, and within that, there are millions of shining stars already in good jobs and tens of millions of rising stars poised for wage growth if given the chance based on skills, not degrees. It's a huge pool of untapped talent.
Are there national examples of governments promoting skills?
Definitely. Singapore's Skills Future Initiative is a big one, a national movement investing in lifelong learning, giving citizens credits to use for upskilling and reskilling throughout their careers.
Putting money behind it.
Yes. And France launched a skills investment plan back in 2018, aiming to train millions of job seekers and young people, focusing on skills needed for digital and green transitions. They trained almost 1 million job seekers in 2019 alone. It shows governments recognizing skills development as vital for national competitiveness.
And Standard Chartered, going back to them, they're involved in community skill building too.
They are. Their Future Makers program uses their expertise to help disadvantaged young people. They reached over 1 million between 2019 and 2022. Learn skills, get mentoring, find work, especially focusing on young women.
That's impressive reach.
They also have programs using sports to teach financial literacy to adolescent girls, and initiatives supporting women, tech entrepreneurs with training and funding. They're even exploring a mobile app to offer bite-sized learning and skill assessments to their clients and the wider community.
So it extends beyond their own employees, building a broader ecosystem.
Exactly. It's about lifting the capability level more broadly.
Okay, wow. We've covered a lot. Just to recap quickly, this is a massive shift away from jobs towards skills as the core organizing principle for work.
Driven by tech like AI, the need for speed and agility, and it's fundamentally changing how we think about everything: work design, careers, leadership, development.
And while it's clearly a huge undertaking for organizations, the benefits, agility, resilience, inclusion, productivity are real and being achieved by companies leading the way.
It's not just a future trend, it's happening now. The core takeaway is this shift is undeniable and accelerating.
So let's bring it home for the listener. What's your guide to thriving personally in this skills-powered world? What should you be doing?
Okay, practical takeaways. First, get clear on your raw material. What motivates you? What are your interests, your aspirations? Really understand yourself. Maybe use validated tools or just ask people you trust for honest feedback what adjectives describe you. Self-awareness is step one.
Know thyself. Okay.
Second, do a personal skills audit. And don't underestimate yourself. Remember that Sky Hive example. You probably have more skills than you think. Use AI tools, look at LinkedIn, use existing frameworks to map out maybe 20 or 30 skills and your rough proficiency level. Start seeing yourself as that bundle of capabilities.
Not just a job title. Bundle of capabilities. I like that.
Third, decide on your strategy. How will you be unique? Think about hybridization. Not just where you work, but combining skills from different domains. Like Book says, the HR leader who can code, the engineer who understands brand strategy. That creates unique, hard-to-copy value.
Finding your niche through combinations. Makes sense.
Fourth, invest in skills to build skills. Since specific technical skills change so fast, focus your core investment on those foundational enabling skills that help you learn and adapt continuously.
Like
Influence, sense-making, understanding complex situations, transdisciplinary thinking connecting ideas across fields, and effective learning strategies themselves. They're harder to build, maybe, but they have incredible longevity. They're your meta skills for navigating the future.
Okay, crucial. And the last takeaway.
Finally, assign value to your culture and organization-specific skills. Every place has its own unwritten rules, its own way of getting things done. Understanding that context, knowing how to navigate your specific organization successfully, that ability to see and adapt to context, is a hugely valuable skill in itself. Don't discount it.
That's really practical advice. So, to wrap up, maybe a final thought from the authors.
Yeah, they leave us with something quite provocative. Taking a more skills-powered view of careers might make it more difficult to plot out our future in an obvious way, which some people will find uncomfortable.
That's true. Less certainty.
However, they continue, the opportunity for greater freedom and experimentation in our work and in our lives is an idea worth leaning into. If organizations, communities, and governments can find ways to help individuals identify and respond to the right signals about skills at the right time, it's possible that it could be a win-win for everyone.
So the invitation is really to embrace the uncertainty, start exploring your own skills, and lean into this evolving world of work.
Exactly. See where your capabilities can take you.